And see, it's just like that. That is how we get into a brand new episode here on Longbox Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm the Longbox Punk, and I am joined by Mr. Von Stoddard himself. Gerald, how the heck are you, man? Thanks for coming on.
Oh my God, this is awesome. I'm good. I'm good. We're gonna talk about comics, so that's exciting.
That's right. Name of the game is indie comics are the freaking best. And
That's absolutely.
Absolutely. We're going to do comics. We're going to talk obviously about Immortal Coil, which is currently back running on Kickstarter, backed in the episode description. And so you can check that out as you listen to us talk about it. We're going to get into community. We're going to talk about punk rock bands, all sorts of great stuff. But first, as any introduction has to go, what's your origin story? How'd you get into comics? How'd you start writing comics? How did this all happen for you?
Just jumping right into it.
Yeah, man.
We're just getting right into it. Let's not waste any time. Right. Let's go, let's not do any warm up.
That was the 3 minutes before I hit the big red button. That was just loosening up, getting the flow right. And now it's showtime, man. So the lights are on. The audience is hot.
Absolutely. And I'm in the hot seat. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's great to be here and hang out with you, Chris. I told you before, I'm a fan of the show. I love what you're doing. So just to get to come hang out with you and talk about comics, that's just, what a great way to spend a Sunday night. That's so cool. It's like, I can't believe it's my job. I can't believe it's my job to hang out with awesome people at 7 on a Sunday, talk about comics. How cool. How cool is that?
Rad.
And that's what I always wanted to do. Because that's my origin. That was there hasn't been a time in my life that I didn't dream about that. That was the OG goal since I was 3 years old. Comics have been a huge part of my life. Not just I loved comics. It was a hobby. It was I was dead set. My first comic was in kindergarten, and I drew a comic about Albert Schweitzer, which is so weird to draw in kindergarten. I was already a weirdo, and I didn't know much about Albert Schweitzer. I just found him in an encyclopedia, and I thought it was cool. And if you don't know who he is, I barely remember who he is either.
Great.
He's on Wikipedia. And I got in trouble for it because I think it was ahead of its time. And comics were always always the center of good memories as a kid. My grandmother, who passed away a long time ago, one of our actually on Sunday mornings, we used to go down a little small town in upstate New York, and we would walk into town to a place called Turney's, and it smelled like cigars and newspaper. And they had a magazine rack, because back in those days, I might be dating myself. Back in those days, the comic racks were everywhere: drugstores, supermarkets.
Yeah.
You don't see that so much in America. In Europe, it still exists, but not so much in America. You really have to go to shops to really get books. And it's unfortunate because I feel comics could be more what they used to be, fun, less about speculation, less about collecting, and just more about the medium. But that was those were the highlights of my weekends, to go down to Turney's and get whatever comic. I barely, whether it was Avengers, Sad Sack, Casper, Richie Rich, whatever was on the rack. I would read it. Every time I picked up a comic book as a kid, I felt like it was like just a warm feeling. I just was so happy. And but I didn't know I could draw. I didn't know that was something I could do. And I was actually in a terrible accident when I was a little kid a few years later, and I was in a very short-term coma.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad accident. And this is my origin story. This is my slice of life comic book origin. I had to wear this turban, and I wasn't allowed to go to school because they had to keep me awake. And I had a concussion still, and My uncle, who's actually super creative, probably the biggest inspiration of my life. He was a super talented artist. He loved drawing like Donald Duck and Daffy Duck and crazy characters, Hanna-Barbera, stuff like that. Rocky and Bullwinkle, and he would draw these on wood, and they were surrounding the house.
Oh, that's cool.
And he would paint them. And I was just one day looking at them, and I decided I wanted to draw Donald Duck as a vampire. And I couldn't go to school, so they gave me some paper and a pencil, and that was it. I was off to the races. It actually came out pretty good. That's what I was told. I don't remember. Probably it was garbage. And that was it. That began my love affair with creating comics, and that's all I did for well into college. And even, when I got out of college, I was living in Los Angeles. I was working on a show I'm not going to say. And I was just working in the PA department as a security assistant for the soundstage. And I was just drawing comics, and I wasn't taking it seriously. And actually, it was Whoopi Goldberg who, out of all people, brought me a sandwich because she said I looked hungry, was looking at what I was drawing, and she said, "That is really cool. That's really interesting. You should do that." And so I did that. And the only reason I stopped doing comics for a long time was because I got into music. And music became a huge part of my life, and it paid really well. And comics was like my labor of love. Fast forward, I'm older. I have 2 kids. One's a teenager, and I just had so much stories from all those years, just built up. And I was painting actually for a while, and then I moved into digital painting, and it was just like last year I said, no, I want to draw comics again. And here we are.
That's wild. So what was the transition like for you going from like analog painting on canvas, I'm assuming, unless it was like watercolor and then on like a pad, but like, what was the transition like for you going from analog to then digital painting?
K-pop Junkie is here. She's awesome.
Super supportive.
Yeah, Katie is one of the best. She's awesome. I'm making her a nice special cover. Katie, I'm making your cover. Don't worry. She just came here to check. She just came here to check on me and say, "Hey, where's my book?"
That's exactly it. Yeah, she's shaking you down in the comment section.
She is. Well, it was. I wasn't unfamiliar with digital. I wasn't unfamiliar with digital work because I was doing a lot of graphic design too. So I had kind of my own business. I was doing music. I was acting in film. I was doing graphic design on the side, and so I was using a lot of digital tools. From Adobe stuff to Pro Tools. So digital wasn't a scary word for us. It was actually, a lot of that was at the time was huge for us, sort of DIY kind of artists, because there were things we could do. Like I'm thinking about like CD Baby, back in the day, things that we could do that, God, I used to sell cassette tapes that I made at like Kinko's in Santa Cruz, California, out of the trunk of my car,
Awesome.
we're recording songs on a 4-track in some guy's garage, that was, I've always loved the DIY kind of mindset. And so there's when digital really became a household term and way to do stuff. What a huge thing. So the tools are different. I still love to paint hands-on because that's more like, it's like tribal. It's like a meditation. And it can feel that way digitally, but there's still something about the analog sort of feel of things that I still love. And I'm still that way as a comic artist. I do both traditional and digital. And probably more digital than I would like, but that's just because I'm blessed to be so busy.
Yeah. So let's talk about how busy you are, because not only do you have Immortal Coil on Kickstarter right now, you're also doing art on The Devil's Gate, and then you also just did artwork for the CBCC comic
Pots
book.
and panels, yeah.
Yep, for Pots and Panel. Like, you're everywhere.
Well,
How are
that's
you
just
keeping all that straight?
and honestly, that's just scratching the surface. So, you know, anybody who is interested in my art, I'm really excited about 2025 because, you know, the past few months, besides Immortal Coil, it's crazy. There's no stop. I've got, you know, 2 more books that I can't really talk about. You know, pages for other creators, for anthologies. I'm trying to get after. I did about, just in the last 3 months, probably did 7 covers. God, I can't even keep up, and I'm trying to keep track of it all. I got to, you know, Chuck Satterley, who is kind of, you know, him and his partner Jason, and we're kind of like sort of the brains behind Pots and Panels. They have a comic that they've been in the works for a long time called Obsolete. So I'm about 4 or 5 pages in on that. So I'm doing the interiors for a pitch that they're creating for that comics, which is it's an homage to like the 60s and 70s sort of spy $6 Million Man type TV shows.
Cool. That's awesome.
So it's like a mix between like Top Gun and $6 Million Man. That's very different from what I normally do, but it's fun. It's fun to get out of my comfort zone and try something new. So, and listen, here's the crazy thing. None of that even was happening until I put Immortal Coil out there. So I'm grateful to the Kickstarter community, because it wasn't just that, hey, I wrote and drew this book.
Yeah.
It was that there were people who it resonated with, which I did not expect. I mean, that I didn't put this book out going, this is the next best thing. I was like, this is just what I love, and maybe 1 or 2 people might enjoy it. I don't know.
Yeah, and here we are going gangbusters. First issue completely successfully funded. Now the second issue, and I'm totally cheating here. You've got 14 days to go. You've got 150 backers. You're nearing in, dare I say, at doubling the goal for funding. Like, that's no small feat. So congrats on all of the success with the book, and everything just taking off for you, which is great, especially knowing that comics have always been the thing for you, like in the back burner that you wanted to get to. So now that you're there, I love that you're finding success doing it. And you did it the DIY way, which is just even better for me. So so tell me about Immortal Coil, because the little 2-sentence blurb of it being an epic story of Norse mythology through the lens of eldritch horror, set in a modern world teetering on the brink of cosmic oblivion. Like, there's a lot to that, and a lot of it I am just very excited about seeing what you're doing with it. I missed the first one. I'll be the first to just admit, but I am a completist, so I did the backup, the catch-up tier. But like, so what's the story about? Where did this come from?
I won't want to take up all my time, because I could talk about well, because I love this story, and you know, as the writer, this is really epic, and I mean, I've got audio notes on my phone, on my laptop, because I'm driving and I'm thinking and I'm reading and I'm researching, so what it really came from, and I'll say this, is that, you know, this isn't my first foray into comics or DIY comics. I mean, 13 years ago, I put out a kind of a kids version, in a way. It was like almost like a kids CW show as a comic book. And because I had a newborn baby at home. I was a stay-at-home dad. I was transitioning. I actually owned and started a sort of a kind of a punk rock comic shop up in Portland, Maine, which is still going today, Coast City Comics. So I had this comic shop, and I got tired of looking at everybody else's stuff. And you know, hanging out a lot with friends of mine who are still doing this deal, like Ben Bishop and Joe Schmalke. And I wanted to just do my own. So I wrote this story. But here's the thing, and I've said this many times, you know, it bombed. It failed really hard. But not because, one, I was too afraid to use my own art. So I just wrote the story, and I was too afraid to write this story the way I wanted to. So this, you know, last March, I said, I was thinking about this story, and I was thinking about the part of it, you know, that, you know, there's sort of like this tagline in Immortal Coil, especially for number 2, that, you know, death is not the end. It's just the beginning. That was a big, huge part of that story that I wrote called Dead Boy. And I would say, now there's so much to that I want to keep, the grandfather and the son. And that's a lot, you know, kind of, you know, I recreated that in the first issue, except the son doesn't kill the father in the kids version. And I said, you know what, listen, whatever. If people don't like the way I draw, it's okay. I draw the way I draw, and that's it. So I'll you know, actually it was Joseph Schmalke who said to me, you know, I think your art is just fine. So, because I was actually looking for an artist. And he inspired me to do it myself. And I'm glad he did, because I don't have time to do anything else now. So this, I mean, the story is like kind of years in the making. I love Norse mythology. I love Eldritch horror. The sort of underbellies of Eldritch horror. I love the underbellies of everything, really. Like, you know, what you know about Norse mythology. I want to know what I don't know about it. And Eldritch horror, I want to read and come at it what you don't know about Eldritch horror, you know. And I also think that Lovecraft was way ahead of his time as a writer, as a wordsmith, as an imaginer, as a, you know, a visionary. If you ever read his writings, there are people writing now, I don't feel, write that powerfully and imaginatively, you know, through the written word. And I've always been, Neil Gaiman is my hero, and I idolize him as a writer. I don't know him personally, but as a writer, he's my biggest probably inspiration in life. And so I wanted to come at it a different way, and I've always loved the prose edda of Norse mythology, and I just started thinking about these children, these offspring, you know, and that's what this story is about. It's about dysfunctional families on a cosmic scale. I mean, so it's sort of like taking like something you could relate to as a human being and put it in this epic container. Like, okay, imagine if you take your really messed up dysfunctional family and then make them immortal and they're gods, and they could tear it all apart by just, you know, a bad Sunday, you know. And that's kind of really what it's about, you know. So it's about revenge and redemption. It's a lot of anti-heroes and Thor's children, and coming at these gods that you know, but just in a different way. Because I love stories of like that don't finish. Like, where could you go with that? And that's the cool thing about Eldritch horror and Lovecraft, is he, you know, this stuff is public domain, and it always has been. He didn't want to copyright this stuff because he wanted that world to continue. Like, what are you going to come up with? What can you come up with to add to this universe? Make it your own, or, you know, contribute. And I feel the way about Norse mythology. It's not the same, but it, you know, it's sort of like, it just kind of ends with Ragnarok, and then we historically move into Christianity, and then it's just kind of over, you know. But I'm like, what if it never ended?
Yeah.
What if it was so? And then here we are. So the story's, you know, just going to kind of get a little more comic booky, you know. But I'd love to also come at it in a prose way too. Like, I don't want to just make like comic book tropes. I want to, that may be poetic in parts, because I love poetry and I love literature at the same time, and I love comic books. And how can I mix them up?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So you're like intentionally trying to include elements from all these different spaces in literature, and like trying to just throw them all in a blender, pour it out onto the page, and that's Immortal Coil.
Pretty much.
Awesome.
Like, it's like, taking sort of mythologies that are somewhat established and just having fun with it. Just coming at it in what I think is a fun, creative way.
That's great. And I love looking at the preview, like, of the Kickstarter page and some of the preview pages and images that you've got on there. It definitely feels very dark. And honestly, like anything cosmic horror, like Eldritch, I love Lovecraft. I love Poe. I unironically love Shakespeare. So like everything that you just said, I was very much just like, man, speak it into my soul, because I love all that stuff. And we mentioned beforehand, but when you were talking about Lovecraft being public domain and always being domain, like, what can you do with it? Post-punk and backer of Immortal Coil, Travis Gibb, has that whole like Cthulhu Invades series that he does, which is super fun because it's approaching this recognizable character in a very different, unique way. And I think for me, like I've gone through all of the phases, I feel like, of comics, and where I'm at now is I love things that take commonalities and tropes that are like, this is the hero's tale, and if you can flip it on its head and make it feel fresh and different and unique, that's my like wheelhouse. Like, give me something unexpected. And so when I was reading, like, just that tagline of Norse mythology through the lens of eldritch horror, I was like, how? No, you could do that. I've never thought of I've never seen anything that does it that way. And so that by itself, because I'm just a huge, anyone that has watched this is like, please stop talking about horror. But I love horror, and because you can do so much with it. And so knowing that you're approaching this story with the lens of like the eldritch horror and the cosmic, just like, this is like, there are consequences here, just has me really excited to read this series. So,
and it's hard because, I have 13 issues mapped out. I know how the story ends. All I can say is this, that I know how it ends, and it is not going to be I would give someone $1 million if they could guess the ending, because there's absolutely no way.
that's
not because I dreamed about it. I mean, I don't. Maybe I saw it somewhere. I don't know. But the first 6 issue story arc really comes at it from a Norse angle, almost like you're behind these gods, this family.
Okay.
And you're really, and it has, and especially issue number 2, even the art, really tried to give it that sort of look, that feel. And then the last 6 issues will be from more of a horror, the more Lovecraftian eldritch sort of family. So it's going to like go up a level on sort of its cosmicness. So first 6 issues are really kind of like more Norse flavored, and the last 6 issues will be more eldritch flavored. How you're sort of looking at it, and it will reflect in the art, and it will reflect in the story, and sort of like who's sort of like the background narration viewpoint. That's
cool. I love, and I'm assuming, because in the brief research, aka stalking your social media, that I did, thank God for social media.
I know, right?
And also, like, why social media? It's such a it's a fine line.
I know. It's true.
You've lived life, like, you've done the thing, you've seen some stuff. Like, are there elements from your life that you wanted to include? And like
100%. I mean, that's how the story started. I mean, really started was, wasn't my father, but my grandfather was someone he was my hero. He was actually in issue number 1, there's a funeral scene. And if I was a grown up, that would have been me giving that eulogy. And his death had a profound effect on me as coming of age, as a young man, as someone who wanted to travel. He wasn't very old when he died, and he was a storyteller. you know, he had done traveling. He was a police officer in Nazi Germany. He wasn't a Nazi. He was an American. But he was, when the American occupation was there, he was a motorcycle cop, and he looked so cool in those photos. And we would just sit at the kitchen table, and he just had the best stories, and he had a great sense of humor. And I idolized the guy. And so he was my Odin. He kind of was bigger than life. And so when I could have came at this story, yeah, there was a part of that. There's definitely a part of that. There's a lot of dysfunction in my family too. I have siblings, so you know, there's elements of it at, you know, where there's a, yes, these are gods, but there's a hopefully a sort of humanness, moments of what kind of identification, but just on a whole other level. But underneath the subtext,
yeah,
is this is a family who could stab each other in the back. You will meet in the second issue some characters that won't stab you in the back, and it's sort of like sins of the father. There's a lot of that theme is going to come up in the second and third issue, like the sins of the past, and what do you do with that? Like, how do you redeem what other people have done, and how do you not hold on to that and think about others before yourself? So there's obviously elements of that. Sure.
That's great. And it is a very challenging thing that I feel like enough people don't put the time and energy into, of the, like, truly forgiving someone. Like it's a hard thing. It's easy to say, like, oh, I forgive them, like whatever. But then, you know, the next time you see him at a gathering or work or whatever, and you see him, you're like, "Ugh, I forgave him." Like, did you though? Like, is that actually what forgiveness looks like? And so it's a hard thing to do. And sometimes, like, all you can do to figure those things out is like realize that it's not about figuring it out. It's about being aware of it. And that goes for a lot of stuff. Not to get super philosophical, I don't do that.
It's okay.
But like, when, you know, with the, like, just messy family stuff at, like, yes. And the losing a grandparent that was severely significant to you growing up, like, yes, like all of those things that you were just saying, I'm like, yeah, my grandfather was in World War II and was in communications, and like, he was a badass, and he never talked about it because he just didn't. And so like, you know, years after he passed, some of those stories finally started coming out of like, well, yeah, you know, like so my dad is one of two, and I had an uncle, and my dad sadly is like the patriarch now of the family. All his brother has passed, both of his parents have passed. And so like, it was kind of like a 3-step thing of like, well, yeah, my cousin was telling me that his dad had told him that my grandfather had told him at one point at one Christmas thing, like in 1974, you know, like it was that type of thing where everything was just severely like the game of telephone. But then hearing some of the stories that he did, it was like, God, he saw some shit. You know what I mean? Like, he was behind enemy lines in Nazi Germany during the, like, all of the Americans moving forward. And like, because of what he did, the American forces were able to continue moving forward because he was laying the communication lines to get word from their spies back to the troops of like where they could invade and where they could take and what the shifts were and that sort of thing. And so it's just like,
and that's a comic right there.
Yeah, right. Like, that's such a badass story, and he just never wanted to talk about it. And then like, my uncle did the same thing where he served in Vietnam as part of the Navy, and like, he just didn't talk about it. And so all of these stories came up in one family Christmas like 6 years ago, and it was just like, how did we never know like any of this stuff? And so now I'm just like, I don't have any of those stories. My generation in our family was the first to not serve in any war, dating all the way back to the Civil War. So I don't know what that says about us, but like, we don't have any of those caliber of stories, but like anytime we get together, we all have stories. And like my cousin was always one that when he would tell stories from being in college or playing in bands and traveling and all that sort of thing, it was just like, man, that dude's cool. Like, I want to have stories like that. And so now
Yeah.
I love doing this show because I get to hear people's stories.
That's cool.
And so like in a very roundabout way of doing this, like how, like you were in a band and do like living the band musician life. What was that like?
Yeah, I did that too. I did that. It was great. I mean, and sometimes I have regret and sometimes I don't, because I'm glad that I have lived enough life before I'm doing what I'm really doing 2 feet in now. Like there's nothing that could really, it's sort of like my kids and making comics, that's pretty much my life, and that's not going anywhere. But when I was in art school, I dropped out. I hung out with a commune of musicians we were all DIY, and we were listening to, for me, it was new music. I mean, I used to listen to a lot of older stuff, but there was a lot of stuff coming out in the sort of early to mid 90s that was, for me, it was amazing. I just named a band called Drive Like Jehu, probably one of my favorite bands of all time. It was kind of this progression of punk. I guess you call it post-punk, sort of. It was like way before emo, but maybe it was kind of creating the foundation of this more sort of emotional punk rock. But it was like walls of guitar sound, and it was like a Velvet Underground in a way. It became a band in 1994,
Okay.
Very loud, but I don't just spoke to me. So there was a lot of music like that going on, and I loved writing poetry too. And I had been playing in bands since I was, oh my God, 14.
Oh wow.
And mostly for fun. I was in one band for a long time, and we were young, super young. But we got to hang out in recording studios, and I always fell in love with that sort of life. And so music was always part of my life too. Like it still is. I mean, but now I'm more of an audiophile, and I just, it's funny because in fact, I mean, I couldn't draw without loud music on. That's a huge part of every page, every line, everything has a song behind it. And I've almost thought about making one day a comic about someone who draws and about music, and how music and this specific type of art really are like a continuation of each other. The moods, the vibes, the slice of life kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it was more for fun. But then as I got a tiny bit older, actually started taking it more seriously. Was signed to an indie label, and we did some touring, and we had a band called Cougars Kill Cobras. You can find it on Spotify.
Love it.
And our second album was taken down. I'm not sure why. And but being in a band is hard. Playing music. I'm sorry, but I think it's way harder than making comics. I think it's a different type of community. It's a different lifestyle. It shares a certain commonalities. It can have that sort of DIY kind of thing. You can community, all that stuff, but it's hard. It's hard to spend so much time with like 3 other people. Thank you. That Jehu was an amazing man.
My dude Crispin,
absolutely.
no, he's just a wide range of like punk rock knowledge.
Yeah,
talking about it's like, how do you know all this stuff?
And Chris, I mean, then you might know, Rocket from the Crypt and Polvo and Knapsack and God, I'm just trying to think.
I know Rocket
all
from
the Discord.
That one,
yes. All the Discord bands that were coming out at the time, and that was my scene. I mean, that was, because I was coming of age as a young man during that period. I was living in Pittsburgh. There was an incredible amount of bands. There was a cool coffee house that had a movie theater and a punk rock stage, and I was a barista there. And
that's awesome.
And so we got to watch like 12 Monkeys, and then serve coffee, and then go listen to these awesome post-punk bands. I mean, that was my life in Pittsburgh, and that was a great time. And then we go play chess. I love the 90s. It was like, yeah, let's play chess. I mean, chess was punk rock, you know.
That's great.
You know, but that kind of, you know, music sort of fell apart, and I was getting older. I was, you know, I was like well into my 30s, and my first son was born, and that just lifestyle just didn't work. So I actually transitioned to scoring music, and I became this is hilarious. I think it's funny. I became known as the background guy. You have heard my music if you have ever watched VH1 or even BET. I did music that you're not supposed to hear.
Okay.
That was my specialty. So I've done the background music for Britney Spears, Behind the Music, and America's Next Top Model, and I was paying the bills and just making music like this at home, and I was like, I want to die. You know? I mean, I was like, it was soul crushing, you know. And you know, and that's when I got back into comics again, because I was like, what feeds me? Like, what feeds my purpose? Whether it's about money, not so much, but about, hey, I don't want to regret not doing this.
Yeah.
And so I just stopped doing that nonsense, and you know, sort of got back into art, and then it's just sort of been this journey of being a dad and traveling, and you know, and here we are, kind of full circle, you know, full circle where I sort of started. But yeah, no regrets. I mean, I'm very no regrets.
No regrets, man.
I'm gonna get that tattoo. I want to get that tattoo so bad. No regrets,
dude. That's one of the things that just lives in my brain, just rent free, and it's become like I don't even say no regrets anymore. It's always no regrets, and it's all thanks to a Snickers commercial.
And you know, honestly, I mean, as much as I love music, I think that it was about the creativity for me. I mean, I have friends who are insane musicians, and they've always been so. It was, you could tell this is what they're supposed to do. Yeah. And it never really felt like that's what I was supposed to do. It was just something that was fun to do, you know. Yeah. And that's different, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's like, this is my calling and this is my hobby. And I too frequently growing up thought that they could or they should be the same thing. And so I would try and force whatever I liked doing into being the thing that I did all the time. And even see, like, I would try and do, like, my degrees in broadcasting. I worked at radio stations here in the metro Southwestern Ohio market. And I just like had the awful shifts, and I was not having fun with it because I was just like, well, I'm brand new in the industry. So like, I'll just say yes to whatever you give me. And then I realized,
that where you are? Are you in Southwest Ohio?
Yep. Yeah. I'm
that's why you're a punk. Because I would be. That's why I've lived in Ohio.
Yeah, man. We don't have anything else to do. We got corn, and we've got like basements with music. And
I did a lot of music in Oberlin.
Okay.
Yeah, north.
I'm basically between Dayton and Cincinnati.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Both are about an hour for me. So, but yeah, like trying to make, like I had that same, like, what's something, I was tired of having jobs and I wanted to have a career, right? Like there's a distinct, my job at Kmart isn't going to be my career. Like I'm not going to be my store manager at 65 working still at Kmart.
Oh yeah, Chris, we're going to need you to come in on Sunday and stock the ladies' underwear next.
Yeah. That was,
and you know what? You do a good job. There's a promotion in there for you.
I'm just saying that shoe department really needs some helpful hands, if you know what I mean. Thanks, Ernie. Yeah. But yeah, so like it's realizing, like, for me, the fundamental thing was my hobby has to be the creative outlet. So like I went to college to have a hobby. Basically, this is how I use my degree. And I I moonlight as a contractor for video production stuff. And like, that's cool. But like, this is, if I could make a job out of just this show, wink to
Yeah.
any big company that wants to sponsor this, or, just doing like the production thing, that'd be great. But like, I look at my job as a means to an end now. And so it's like, I don't care what I do, as long as I've Monday through Friday, like I want weekends off with my wife. I need to be able to take time off if my daughter's got a thing, and because she's in high school, like, so I need to be able to adjust as needed. And so like, it's funny, as I've grown, I can notice and mark specific moments where like priorities changed for me. And it went from like, I need to have a job that I am using my degree and I'm doing the thing and I love what I'm doing and like all the things. And then it suddenly, I had that job and I thought that's why I was like, cool, I'm done. I don't need to look. This is where I'm going to retire from. Like, this is my career job. And after 3 years, I was like, this is not it. Like, all of my relationships are suffering, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
sure. Well, that's it. I mean, what you just said there too, if it's okay. I mean, you gotta eat, and you have to have a domicile and all those, those things, no matter what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
But I can only talk about sort of like indie comics. I can't talk about every single thing in life, what someone might do, but the fact that, and Katie's here hanging out, and you, and there's a guy I'll be hanging out with tomorrow, who's doing this thing called Stay Weird Network. Chris, Tim Fling, even Travis has a show. I mean, it goes to show that, hey, there may not be a ton of cash in indie comics, and you're not going to get rich anytime soon, but there is a what's the word? Not just a love of it, but how much it's grown. I mean, how much it really has grown, that you could have a show about indie comics creators, and you're going to have maybe less viewership than if you had, why he comes to, James Tinian on, or Jim Lee or something crazy like that. I mean, you're going to get a lot of people who watch that, but they're not going to be watching it for you.
Yeah. Like,
for you, they're going to be watching it because they're already fans of that, and they come and they go. And what I love about the indie comics, and it's something I've always had the spirit of, no matter what creative project I'm doing, is that community aspect. It's that love of the game. And because if you don't have that, you're going to quit before you even get started, because I do see it on social media sometimes that there's this, like, I don't know, people are jumping to comics because the movies, probably a little bit, or they think there's money in it because they just want to create an IP that's going to become a TV show. And that's cool. It might, but it is for the love of the medium, and there is no other medium like it. Yep. And you do have to have fun with it, and you have to meet people to have fun with.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't feel like work. Some days it does. Don't get me wrong.
Some days it definitely does. I'm sure. Yeah.
I have a lot of pages to draw. Silas is here. He's probably like, "Hey, why is Gerald here? He's got pages to draw." I do. I know. But just the fact that there are people like you and Katie and Chris and Tim and Travis and a lot of people doing this thing, having these cool shows that you showcase people that no one would ever hear of. Yeah. I love it, and not because I'm on it, because I watch it. I watch all the shows you guys do, people that are here and your shows, and I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny how I kind of like fell into this like niche corner that I'm in. Because I honestly, like, I just wanted to have a show where I talked about music and comics. Like, that's how it started. And my radio show.
There's a writer here, Silas. He's the writer of Devil's Gate. He said something pretty funny.
Oh yeah.
Let me draw these pages immediately. Does 17 other things.
Listen, man, I don't need to be attacked like that. Okay.
No, I think he's talking about me.
Oh,
I
I'm
think
for sure he is. But as
yeah.
an ADHD person, that's me too. But instead of drawing pages, because I can't draw my way out of a paper bag, but like I'll have like, oh, I need to take care of some show stuff. I need to,
Yeah, sure.
do
Yeah.
this thing or that thing or whatever. But first, let me like
Yes.
reorganize this and like restack that and put these things away and do this other stuff. And then I just crash. And then I wake up, I'm like, I just need one day of productivity. I just need one day. And then I get those 1 days and I get to the end of it and I'm like, I didn't do anything I expected to do today.
Absolutely. Well, 100%. And there are days like that. I mean, especially when you're self-publishing your own work and you are working in sort of that type of environment. It isn't all just creative. You have to find that balance between the other side of your brain, which is very hard.
Yeah.
Because I could go 3 days and it's art, and then it's like, oh my God, I have to pull my laptop out. And then once I pull my laptop out, I know this is going to be the work. Not that I don't love, it's just hard I'm not as good at it at that as maybe some people, because I could just live in that creative bubble, which isn't necessarily healthy. But there's stuff you got to do too. There's messages, there's maintaining your Kickstarter page, there's making sure there's just a lot of logistics stuff too to make sure that is handled, because it's the thing about indie comics is, I mean, you really got to be the one with the eye on the ball, because no one's ever going to really be behind your project like you are.
Yeah.
It's your baby, and it's like, it's crying to be fed,
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah. So we touched on community and like the admin part. I'm always fascinated to hear, like, how did you figure out the like stuff that wasn't writing and drawing a comic? Like, how did you figure out, like, how do you set up a Kickstarter? How do you prep a file for print? Like, was it the community that you reached out to?
100%, 100%. When it comes to all of that, I take zero credit for any of it. I feel it. And I could just go off and give a list of names. Tyler James Vogel has a community, the Comics Launch community, huge in getting my first Kickstarter page done. Tyler's experience, as well as there's a Facebook community and a Discord community, and I'm very heavily involved in both. And I mean, I asked a lot of questions, and once you join the community, there's like all these resources, and I just followed them to a T. And I just did what was told of me by people who had done it: Joseph Schmalke, Travis Gibb, David Byrne, Joel Rodriguez at Metal Ninja Studios. I could just keep going. Christian Dabari, who's I've been friends with a long time, but I mean, actually, he's one of my heroes in the comics community in New York. I asked a lot of questions, and I risked being annoying. I risked people going, God, not this guy again. Because, well, I wasn't really trying to annoy anybody. Look, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to make this book, I'm really going to take this seriously. I want to do it right, not for me, but if someone is going to drop $10 on something that they don't even know who you are, they didn't know anything about me, I'm the new guy on the scene, this has to at least, and if it fails, at least it was done really, I don't want to say right, but really with the best foundation possible.
Yeah.
And then I knew it wouldn't feel like a failure. It would just been like, hey, listen, I crossed my T's, dotted my I's. It just didn't resonate with a fan base out there. Whatever I'm doing, timing is off. It could be a million factors. But yeah, community is everything. It is, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how people do it without one. I don't know. I don't imagine how you could. And if people are, I don't know them. I don't know them necessarily personally. I think there are people who do have the ability to pull up their bootstraps and just have lightning strike. But most of the people I'm surrounded by, it's, some trial and error, and it's just, asking lots of questions and saying, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And then just they tell you and you do it.
That's great. I
Yeah.
so mentioning bootstraps, there's an anecdote that my old pastor said that like just has stuck. Anytime I hear about, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like if you actually go to pull up your bootstraps, you pull the rest of your body down. Like you don't pull yourself up. You're working against yourself, thinking
Mm.
that you can do it yourself. And like his was in the context of church and all of that stuff. But
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you think of it in the context of literally anything else, like I
Yeah.
want to figure out how to do a comic, and like I'm currently working on trying to figure out how to write my first comic, and I've got, similar to what you said earlier, like audio notes in my phone, and I've got notes in Google Keep, Google Docs, notes, notepad, like a physical notepad, like there's just stuff written everywhere. And it's the like if I were to try and do all of this stuff and make the thing on my own, and I tried to bootstrap it, I'm not going to get myself up. I'm going to have to like bend down to grab, right? Like
Mm.
I can't grab it from here. So how am I going to get up if I got to bend down to even grab the bootstraps? And so like it just, the
I feel
image
like
of him doing that was just so like
yeah,
simple, but
that's
so
interesting.
profound that I was just like,
Yeah.
why do
Look, I just
people
learned something.
right?
I just
Like,
learned something now.
yeah. So the anytime people say the bootstrap thing, I just laugh internally because I just see my pastor like pulling on his bootstraps and just like
Yeah.
doing this on stage as he's and I'm like, can you stop? Can you please?
But I just want to say this too, because it could be really easy to go out there and be like a leech too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that's only the like sort of like one side of the coin is like go ask a lot of questions, go join this, do that. But if you're just eating all the food off the table and then just run away and you don't give a shit about anybody else, I
Yeah.
don't see how you can make a future in the comics community that way either.
Right.
And comics are part of life as a whole, even though it might be a subculture or a specific medium, it's still life and people are still people. So how you treat any community, whether it's a community of one or a community of hundreds of thousands, and how you behave, that is really key. And I told you before the show, I mean, one of my biggest problems is I'm a fanboy at heart. Like when I see like people I don't even know personally, and I see their Kickstarter so close to funding, and I see them, and they've had a great page. They have I think, a great book. And I'm like, why is mine funded? And why is it? And I get really depressed. I get really upset. And I'm like, I wish I was rich. I would be like, I would start a nonprofit where I'd be the guy who comes in at the end and make sure all your books are funded.
That's awesome.
Because like some of these people, because if you look at some of these people, I mean, come on, they're backing like 700 other projects. They've backed 467. They've backed 3,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that is someone who really gives a shit. And so I think it's important is like, hey, listen, if you want to do this thing, like, be teachable, but give a shit about other people too. Like, really, I think that would be like number one. That's my fortune cookie for the day.
That's good.
Like, give a shit about other people and care about other people's stuff as, almost like your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's the whole like, and I know I've mentioned it before, so I'm sorry if I keep repeating things but like if we're all in our boats in the
Mm.
ocean of indie comics, right? And if I want to see other people succeed, it's not by like tearing down somebody else's boat to raise their boat.
Mm.
Like if one boat rises, all of the boats have to rise.
100%.
So like
100%.
it's all, and I saw a thing on Blue Sky today that was like a little receipt, and it was like ways that you can support your friends when you don't.
Oh, I saw that.
And I
Yeah.
was just like, God, this is so simple, but like
Yeah.
it means the world to independent creators, to people that are just doing the grind day in and day out, and like working a regular 9 to 5, working a second job, raising kids, having a family. And then when everybody goes to bed, creating comics beside, like, I've talked to those people, and it's just like, man, if, you know, if 5 people could just reshare that thing and get, you know, half, you know, 2 people more to look at that campaign and talk about it. Like, even if it doesn't equal like backing a campaign or whatever, if you're just talking about it and sharing it, because the algorithm is real everywhere. Like, it's not just on like terrible political social media sites.
Right.
You know, so like any activity, I just learned, if campaigns have like comments that, like, where people are interacting, they're more likely to boost it on the homepage, or like give it the project we love thing. And so now I'm seeing more creators that are starting to do like, hey, we're going to do a giveaway. So if you leave a comment, like, I'm going to draw a person when we hit X number of backers or whatever, you know, percentage funded. And like, and that's a way that they're trying to entice people to leave comments, because then that boosts the campaign and like gives it a better chance to. And so it's just like those things, no one like, there's not a book on how to do this. It's very much just like,
absolutely,
you know, lean on each other.
And I don't think you need a book. I don't think you need, you know, you like, be a fucking cool dude, or be a and dude is sexless. I mean, I just mean dude in the Californian way.
I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, we're all
a dude.
Hey,
whatever. That's what I mean. It's just like, be a cool person. And I think that's it, you know, like, there are great books, and it's, you know, there's something for everybody. I mean, there really is. And there might be someone in your audience that would love what so-and-so is doing. And it does cost nothing, and it takes nothing. And I go through that as a self-publishing creator. You know, I've gone through periods where I mean, I'm just reposting everybody's stuff, and I'm like, wait a second, I have a Kickstarter. I shouldn't wait a second, you know. Yeah, the Californian way. That's right.
California way. Yep. Dude, see, I went with the Kel from All That Way.
That's not bad. I would read that book. I think that's just part of it too, is like, and because if you're going to be asking questions and you really are just getting started in sort of comic books, people are going to know right away if you're just there to take or if you're there to be part of.
Yep.
That's it. And if you're just there to take, you find out really fast. And, you know, then you wonder why later, like, it didn't work out for me. And it's like, because we're not in it alone. Just like the planet. We're not on this planet alone, you know, and you're not in the community alone. And it means a lot to a lot of people. The smallest of actions, you know, and it's true. I can't back everything I see. I financially couldn't. My kids would be eating ramen noodles for the rest of their life, if even that. Be like at the soup kitchen, you know. And there are times I just want to give everything. Like Aaron Roboleski has an amazing book out, Amor Potrice. I'm sorry if it's Latin. I can't pronounce it well. And there's a guy, Hernan Gonzalez, who's become a friend. He's the artist. And Aaron's awesome. He has awesome stories, great horror. Book looks awesome. And I actually haven't checked whether it funded, but I mean, I think it was like the second or third time. And I get mad. I'm like, fund this book. You know? Like, fund this book. But, you know, best I could do is just, you know, do those things, like try to share, try to retweet, or now re-sky. Is that the new term we're using? Re-sky? I'm gonna re-sky them.
I hope it's re-sky, because I've seen re-skeet, and I don't know if you remember early 2000s rap. Skeet is not a word I want to refer to anything.
Yeah, no.
So I like re-sky. Let's make that a thing. I'm gonna re-sky that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm the same way, where like I have to have a budget for Kickstarters, because if I don't, like, I just rack up a credit card debt, and I'm like, yeah, but this book's so good, you don't get. And then my wife's like, yeah, but babe, we can't do this. I'm like, okay, all right, I guess I'll just.
But you were just saying it. But Chris, you just said it before, and I saw that thing being
the receipt thing?
shared. Yeah, you know, And there was a guy who commented on mine last week and said, hey, I don't have the funds. It was like almost he felt bad, but he was making a comment. He took the time out of his day to be like, this looks awesome. If he just said that, man, you made my day. Because, you know, a lot of times I think as artists, maybe writers too, but I think as artists, we kind of like can live in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And spend so much time maybe alone, unless at cons or comic shops or, you know, online stuff like this. You know, and you do have these days as a creative where, you know, you feel good, and you have days where you're like, I'm just making garbage. You know, this sucks. It just happens. It's part of it's a very much a pendulum. So when someone says that, that's very inspiring. That's can be worth more than backing the book. You made a comment, you thought that page looked really good. And that might be enough for someone who does have the financial means, reads the comment and goes to the Kickstarter and says, I'll support this book.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that kind of thing. You took the time of your day to interact with someone I've never met. I've never met them. And actually I did later find out they're an incredible artist. Like I became even more enamored with the comment.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you are an artist, or maybe even as a writer, and other writers and other artists are like, I love your stuff. I mean, that means like, especially if it's someone like, my God, but wait, look at your art. That's insane.
Right. You're saying something about me, but like, what about you?
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Totally. So yeah, there's definitely, you know, it costs nothing to, you know, do whatever you could, you know, put a heart on it. That's the least you could do. Share it on one of your social media channels. Cause maybe everybody knows 100 people, you know, and maybe one of them, that Sky or Facebook, could be the difference between someone getting their book created or not. Even if you couldn't, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's okay, you know, but maybe someone in your audience you didn't even know could have pushed it over that line, so they can take a breather and say, my fucking book is getting done, guys. Thank you.
Right. I don't have to sit and like refresh the page every third minute. Like, am I there yet? Am I good?
Yeah, totally. Yep. Well, you know, so you know, Silas was I don't know if he's still here, but Devil's Gate, you know, that could use some love. And it's a great book, not just because I'm on it. Silas and his writing partner CJ are awesome writers. They're new on the comic scene. They just did a book called Crux, and that's how we met. We met through Kickstarter messages. He was a backer of Immortal Coil, and he was so enamored with the book, we kind of just started having conversations. And then I saw their book Crux, and I funded that right away. And then we just started talking, and we had a live Facebook meeting. And that's right, Katie, there's a sexy priest in that book. And you know, and it's a great story and a great premise. And I said, you know, and I was like, I have to be the artist on that book. It's such a great story, and they're on Kickstarter right now too. And so if anybody's watching, I'm already funded. I'm not going to be upset if someone doesn't watch this and say, I need to back Immortal Coil. If you watch this, go to the Devil's Gate and back that. Not because I'm the artist on the interiors, because Silas and CJ, this is a great story. This is a comic I would see on the shelf and pick up in a heartbeat.
That's cool. And you guys have a cross promotion happening.
We do.
Where if both the Devil's Gate and Immortal Coil, if you're a backer for both campaigns, at I think any physical tier, you get a sweet like mashup poster featuring like a side-by-side of a character from each story. And that design is sick.
So Whedon is a variant artist on the Devil's Gate, and so we just started talking, and I said, I did this once before with Joseph Schmalke, and it was great. It was a lot of fun to do. It was something like a cool reward to do for people. The art, you know, it's in my book. If you're into straight up horror, maybe Immortal Coil isn't exactly. It's dark, but I'm not sure that it's like it would fit into So the Devil's Gate and the Immortal Coil have similar vibes, not just because I'm the artist on both. It could have something to do with it. But we and I decided that, hey, let's mash it up. We did the one half, the priest, and I did the faceless god on the other side. So yeah, if you back both books while we're live, you're going to get that 6x9 print in your book.
That's cool. I love stuff like that. Two other post-punks had a mashup like that where it was Territory and Monster Matador. And so it was like a giant kaiju story of Territory, and then the Monster Matador fighting the giant Territory, like the Skullbone kaiju. And like,
that's a great book, isn't it? Have you read it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good.
And Steve is talk about a cool guy, just another part of the community. And I don't talk about Steven enough because we don't talk a lot, but you know, he's every time if you say his name, I feel like I just drank some of Grandma's tea. I just like, Stephen Prince. What a guy.
What a guy that's Stephen.
What a guy that's Stephen Prince. and Monster Matador is what it's so cool.
It's such a fun story. Yeah.
It's like Hemingway meets kaiju monsters to me, and the art is really awesome. He has some amazing covers. Mm-hmm. I've been a backer of his books. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with Territory, like Blake McCarthy was one of the first like Kickstarter creatives that I was like, dude, anything he puts out, I'll back it. Like I picked up Territory 1, and it's like a post-apocalyptic, the tribes worship their kaiju as gods. And it was just like the premise was awesome because I'm a huge sucker for kaiju. But then it was just like, it was the characters that I was like, well, what the hell happens? Like, what happens when these two tribes meet that have never met before? And like, what happens when these two kaiju are battling of like this battle of their gods? And like, what is this like? And so to have him on the show was just like chef's kiss, because then like that's seeing awesome that he was doing with Stephen Prince while I was talking to Steven about getting him on the show. And I was just like, dude, this, like the concentric circles that are here is just mind blowing to me. And they keep popping up where it's just like this indie comic community, like it's got something special. And I am so damn happy to be a part of it because it's just like so many cool people, man.
Well, and that's the cool thing too, Chris. You know, I feel like, you know, you, Katie, Tim, all these people I've mentioned before, you know, who have awesome shows, and Chris Daly, comic creators need you too. You know, it is a symbiotic relationship. Absolutely 100%. Not just to promote, because that's boring. If you just come on these shows just to promote your book, it's so boring. I mean, I think I haven't even talked about Immortal Coil in like half an hour, and I'm 100% okay with talking about comics, talking about community. I mean, that's my favorite thing anyway. So and it's very symbiotic, and I hope more people come to these shows and see the value of it. Like, you know, they see the value and the fun and the community, you know, aspect of it, and are like, is just as important as the books themselves.
That's cool. Well, I am humbled by you saying that, because I never feel like I'm just like, dude, I'm just a dude with a hobby. Like that's how all of this started. So if I can do anything to like boost or give back or anything to the indie scene, like job done, box checked, hat on that, because that's what it's about for me. Is I love indie comics. It's 2024, almost 2025, which is insane. And like, it's the best time to be a comic book fan, because there's something for everybody. Like any genre, it's there. Like I heard a joke about manga where there's so many types of manga. It was like, if you've stubbed your toe on a coffee table, there's a manga about it. If you hate celery, there's a manga about it. And like that variety in a non like purely satirical way is true for comics right now. Like there's just a comic
100%.
And it's
100%. Well, we're talking about Leighton Cobb, you know, CL. I mean, he's got a book called Drunk Mom. And if you look at that book, I mean, that's so different from what I do. You know, I could think of a million books. I mean, you know, look at Steve Prince. I mean, for me, that's like a real comic book. You look at what Travis is doing, Granite State Punk. You know, David Byrne's Staked, Rob Motari's Lone Wolf. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I mean, I just, you know, backed another book today called No Heroin, and because I met the artist and I loved his work. I thought he was super cool. I was like, I'll back this book because, you know, again, community. I saw him at a comic shop and I was like, I heard of it, you know. So I'm just saying there is, I mean, I've seen, you know, if nobody's seen Leighton's Drunk Mom, what a premise.
It's so
what
good.
what a fun book. You know, John Westhoff has some amazing stuff. I love his stickers and his merch so much.
Yeah.
What? I mean, I would never write that book myself, and that's why I love it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I have this just sit at like this type of merch where it's like the super metal band logo and it's the logo of his comic book. Like, just so cool. Freaking cool.
But I'll say something about John Westhoff. I mean, guy's pretty prolific. If anybody follows John, I mean, that guy also makes like a book for everyone and anything. And he's very prolific comic creator. It's insane.
Yep.
I'm kind of like not a one-trick pony, but I like, this is my wheelhouse. I kind of try to stay in here. John's like, fuck that. I'm doing write whatever the hell I feel like it.
Yep. Yeah. He's doing a lot outside of just like creating comics too. He's talking about them. He's, you know, talking to other creators about them. Like, he's everywhere all the time. So super good stuff. I love like how we ended up here. And I kind of had a feeling after like before we went live, I was like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to gush on the indie comics community, which is totally cool. Cause like, it is cool. It needs to be talked about. Like, it's a beautiful place. If you,
it is, and you said there is something for everyone. There is something for everyone. Comics that could not have been published any other way when I was coming of age. I mean, I was part of a zine culture, and there was some cool stuff going on, and we were well inspired by the Hernandez brothers and stuff like that. Love and Rockets. But where it is now, it's on par with being able to go in the shop and buy your Superman or, you know, Batman. You know, it's crazy. It's like almost like, what kind of comic do I want to read? Just go on like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or whatever, Facebook. You know, you're gonna find it. You're absolutely gonna find something you love.
Yep. One of my favorite things to do every couple months is I'll just type in punk rock comic into Kickstarter, and then like, okay, I'll back that one, and I'll buy that. Like, and it's this like, that feels like an obscure, not everybody's making that type of comic, and yet like I get several options every time I do it, and I'm sure that's not isolated. Like, if you wanted to do superhero, like, I know there's a handful of superhero comics right now that are running on Kickstarter that it's very like, all you got to do is search, and it's like,
and if you want help, there's a book that I think the art is phenomenal, and it's Project Neosis. There's Daniel Calvin's American Dreams. There was a book called Rise that came out. That's some superhero stuff that takes it on a different level. Yeah. And, you know, it's not just like this world that's in the movies. It's like kind of I feel like going back to like the roots of comics. Before, it was about IP and it was about escape and maybe relating to a certain degree and fun and DIY, you know, great art, cool stories.
Yep. So, cool. So those are my official, at some point we checked off all the things that I officially had written down, but we're not done yet. I got two more things for you to do. The first is we're going to pose, and I'm going to take a screenshot and use that as our YouTube thumbnail. So I want to get that ready. All right. I'll count us down. 3, 2, 1. We're going to take a few. Cool. So that's the first one. The second one is when I run out of official things to do, I stop talking and I want to turn the mic over to you. So part of why I love doing this show, and I already have alluded to it, but I get to talk to so many unique people with unique perspectives, life stories, experience, all those things. So if there's something that you want people to hear from you, it could be about Immortal Coil. It could be about why indie comics are the best thing ever. The content for me doesn't matter. It's the fact that I want you to have space to just be able to have whatever it is that you want people to hear from you, to tell them that thing. So no pressure, but like you're back in the hot seat.
Oh man. Well, I feel like half of that answer has already been said. I feel like if I ever have any kind of platform, I will take time to say, I really do believe, and not in an egotistical way, that I'm writing and creating stories, or involved in other people's projects who are writing and creating stories that are fit for comics, because they kind of, when you have this medium, you can go out to left field, but you can put it into something you might be able to relate to, that hopefully moves you. And I think Immortal Coil, I think it does that. I love the story, and even if I didn't write it, I would read it. But there's a lot of people doing that too. I'm a drop in the bucket. So if people are new to what crowdfunding is, or we talk about Kickstarter a lot, and there are people who don't know how to do it. They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They're used to the direct market. That makes more sense to them. Comic shops are still a lifeblood of this community as well, and we're all trying to get in there. We're all trying to find the coveted shelf space. But one thing I would say, if I'm in the hot seat, and this has been on my mind a lot lately, and I'm actually very involved in a TikTok community, so I'm doing a series of short videos for people starting out, like like myself, and getting out a certain mindset, like be patient, and just you said it too, we are living in a time when you can do whatever you want, and you will find fans of it. But if you're going to try to go from A to Z, that's not going to happen. And if it does, it may not feel as special. I feel like there are rungs on the ladder, there are steps in the journey, and there's more and more people, and you never know, by even doing this thing called comic books, how much your story even quietly inspires other people, by doing this. And we are living in a time you could draw your own book. If it was stick figures, who cares? There are comic strips dedicated to this type of art. There's no such thing as bad art. There is someone's taste, and taste is really nothing. It's about storytelling, and as long as you're putting those stick figures in a sequential way that makes sense, the way we know how to read comics, it really doesn't matter. This is the ultimate time of DIY. And but I just think that there's also people coming into this stuff wanting what they think is success, wanting what they think is the pinnacle of achievement in creating comics. And it's so cheesy, but it's true. It's about the journey, because I think if the destination is left with a big question mark, it can go to a place that's more aligned with who I really am than where I thought I should be. But I have to be loving what I'm doing now, and I am enjoying the journey. So anybody just starting out sort of in comics, or wanting to know what crowdfunding is, just join a community, be a cool person, meet other cool people, and learn and teach the things you do know, and learn the things you don't know, and just have a fucking good time doing it, or don't do it.
Yeah, because people are going to be able to tell. Like, if you're not
100%.
enjoying what you're doing, it'll come through. And it's like, I'm going to bastardize this quote, but it's like Steve-O said in SLC Punk, like, it's about the love. Like, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Any excuse to work in SLC Punk is a good one. So
you're good. That was clever.
Thank you. And wordsmithing is my thing. I can't draw my way out of a paper bag, but my God, can I talk my way out of one? Hence why I'm doing a podcast.
Right. Well, that's probably how every comic book story starts. You and that's actually would be a really fun book. You should write that book and call it The Paper Bag.
Yeah.
Put the stone of your story in there and try to get your way out.
Love it.
That'd be pretty cool.
Gerald, thank you so much, dude. This was so much fun.
Man.
This was a great like this is my final stream for the year. I'm taking December off, just for like mental health. Like the holidays suck for me. And so I was like, I don't want to have to worry about doing the show and not bringing 100%, but I'll be back in January. I already have like 8 people that were like, dude, I want to come on in January. I'm like, shit. All right. I'm like, cool. I love it.
I know. I mean, people say long box punk, and it's like, I want to be on that show.
The name alone, man. It's all about
That's
branding.
Yeah, 100%. But people should also check out the show. Go to your YouTube page, subscribe, stay alert to that for 2025. If anybody doesn't know, also, Chris does really short but really cool reviews on books, not even without interviews, and those are fun, easily digestible. If you don't want to watch for an hour, just check out his 6-7 minute videos where he's just reviewing comics. I wish there was more of that.
It's great that you say that, because I'm planning on I'm gonna be I haven't talked about this anywhere publicly. I'm gonna be like doing intentionally less days of streaming, like the interview style, this thing, and so that I can regularly, like once a week is my goal, to put out a new review every week next year. So
cool.
Because I've like with Blue Sky just exploding, it's like I'm trying not to think about it because it's insane. I have like close to 2,000 followers on there, and I'm like, why? Oh god! But like, I have all of these awesome indie creators reaching out, like, hey, I had a dude today, and I forget his name. I'm sorry if it was you, but he reached out and he was like, hey, do you review like any indie comic? And I was like, yeah, email it to me. Like, yeah, I'll read it. I'll check it out. Because like I've told other podcasting friends, and like I'm part of the Nerd Initiative Creators Bullpen, and so like they do written reviews a lot, and I do just video shorts because that's my wheelhouse. It's way easier for me to crank out a minute short than it is a meaningful article. And I was talking to some of the people on our Discord, and they're like, I just don't see anything like good about this book. And it was one from the big 2. It doesn't matter what the book was, but I was like, here's the thing, like, there's something to enjoy about any comic book. And even if it's like one panel, it could be the perspective in that panel. It could be the color palette that they use throughout. It could be, this one quippy little one-liner that was just sarcastic and hit you in the right way. Like the whole story doesn't, necessarily, every comic isn't always going to be amazing for everybody, but like, that doesn't mean there isn't something that you can find to be enjoyable and happy. So like, talk about that. And they were just like, oh, yeah, no, I was overthinking. And it's like, just find the good and talk about the good, because there's so much of it out there.
100%. 100%. And it's the same with what we're talking about, resharing other people's projects. Even if it's not something you would back, and if you could, just because it's not for you. There's nothing wrong with that either. But there's someone it is. I believe that 100%. There's someone I don't just have dark, gothic, punk rock, weirdo friends. That would makes up the majority of my friends, but that's not all of them. I have some maybe more traditional friends, who like the more cartoony stuff, or like maybe like a more political, comic book that gives historical fiction in a way, like manga, Japanese stuff. Really, there was something positive you could take from all of it.
Yep. And I plan on doing that even more next
Sweet.
year. So definitely stay tuned. That's the only shameless plug that I'm going to make, because it's the last time I have in 2024 to do that. So,
well, I'm honored to hang out with you today and be the last interview of 2024. I hope New Year brings all of us, even more, more something.
Yeah,
just more
prosperity, more connectodness, more togetherness, more supportiveness, more positivity, all of those things. Yeah, that's what you got to.
You're gonna make me cry. I'm gonna cry.
Yes. There's a first time for everything. So, but thank you so much for just a fun freaking conversation. This is the reason I love doing the show, because I get to just have a great time talking to new people. So again, the Immortal Coil Kickstarter is linked in this episode description, whether or not you're watching or listening on any podcasting audio platform. It's going to be in that description, so it's very easy for you to find it. We have 2 weeks left, 14 days to go, December 9th. Hey, that's my best friend's birthday. December 9th is the final day for the campaign for you to get in, but then also check out the Devil's Gate, which is also featuring artwork from Gerald. Really good stuff. And if you back both, you get that super sweet poster. So do all the things, click all the links, subscribe it, share it, comment it, to hit the, I can't do that. Just thanks for hanging out. This was, I gotta have a line. That's my line. But thanks for hanging out. This was a great, I love, there's connections happening in the chat. That's fantastic. More community building. So I look forward to 2024 ending in a positive note for you and on to a prosperous and more 2025. Hang tight after I end this. I got some logistics for you. But that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in and for being with me in my first year as a show. It's been a wild ride, but what's a good podcast without a good tagline? This is mine. Go do what's good for you, punks, and read some indie comics. We are out of here.